Happy Easter. There's a conversation that happens in our household pretty frequently, and the conversation usually starts with this: I proclaim that I have something coming up. I have a meeting tonight or tomorrow, or I have a tennis match this weekend or something like that. And then Karen, my wife, will look at me and say, "No, you don't. No, you don't, because the girls have a dance recital, or we're having dinner with the so-and-sos, or we're heading to West Virginia to visit family." And this is where, after 25 years of marriage, I have perfected the blank stare, which is meant to communicate this is brand new news to me. And so Karen will look at me and say, "Remember? Did you forget? Again?" And I'll say, "I've never heard this before. This is the first time you're telling me." And she goes, "Oh no, we talked about this last night and a couple days ago, and I texted you about it, and there's an email confirmation in your inbox, and it's been in the family shared calendar for a month and a half." Oh. By the laughter here, I'm assuming I'm not the only one who has this conversation. That's good. The women go to the tomb early on the first day of the week. And they go with the spices and the ointments to make the final preparations for burial of Jesus' body, which they fully expect to be in the tomb when they get there, because where else would it be? Remember, they would have been held in a deep sadness. But Jesus didn't also just die. Jesus was executed by the state. And so there would have been fear and trepidation as well. And so with that maelstrom of emotions, the women made their way to the tomb before the sun rose. And when they got there, they saw the tomb, and the stone was rolled away from the tomb. This is not good news to them at this moment. Just a few days ago, Jesus had been beaten and whipped and stripped and spat upon and mocked. And so their first thought would be, "Oh, what else have they done to him?" And they would have looked into the tomb, and when they didn't see his body there, another wave of fear and anger and sadness would have hit them. But then Luke tells us that the tomb is not completely empty, because there are two men there in dazzling white robes, which is Luke's code for angels. So there's two angels there, and the angels tell them, "He is not here, he has risen." Did you hear what they also say to the ladies? They say, "Remember? Remember how he told you? Remember how he told you while he was in Galilee that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners and be crucified and the third day rise again? Remember?" For my own sense of personal vindication, I like to imagine the women there with the blank stare. Because apparently they did not remember. But it's not just them. It's also the disciples, the boys, who are still in the upper room, behind locked windows and doors, the very picture of bravery. And when the women arrive to say, "He has risen," the disciples don't say, "Oh, right, just like Jesus said." No, they didn't remember either. They didn't remember. But quite honestly, I'm a little dubious about the whole remembering thing, because when someone tells you that they're going to die, but they're going to rise again, I don't think that's something you just forget. Like, if I ended my sermon today with the words that I'm going to have a rough week, I'm going to die, but don't worry, I'm coming back, and I'll see you in church next week. There's a lot of people here who would say, there's church again next week? This is the Episcopal Church. We don't do guilt and shame. A little bit, maybe, but no, I don't think the problem is that they didn't remember. I think the problem is they didn't believe. I don't think they believed Jesus when he said that he would suffer, die, and rise again. It makes me wonder what else Jesus said that they didn't believe, that they just humored Jesus with. Love your neighbor. Love your enemy. There's lots of things that they might not have believed. And on one hand, I kind of want to give them the benefit of the doubt, because I don't think any of us would believe anyone who said that to us. But on the other hand, I kind of think they should have known, partially because Jesus told them, and they should have listened to Jesus. But also because they were steeped in the long story of God. And the long story of God is not a story of one incredible triumph after another. It is the story of one dark hour after another. And yet, after each dark hour, where you think the story must have ended there, I'm not sure how they would have gotten out of that. God gets them out of that somehow. In the beginning of the year, I invited St. David's to read the Bible cover to cover this year. And I know a lot of you are. And so if you've been keeping up, we're about the end of 2 Kings right now. And so we've gotten a good part of the story underway. And we might remember way back in January, the story of the garden, where God created everything and put us in this garden and gave us everything we possibly could have needed or wanted. And he gave us one rule, just one rule: don't eat from that tree. That was it. How'd we do? Not good. By the 3rd chapter, we have done the one thing that God said we shouldn't, and God is angry, and God kicks us out of the garden. And you might think, that's it. That's the end. I mean, if we can't last 3 chapters, where else is the story going to go? And yet, though we leave Eden, God does not forsake us. God goes with us and loves us and blesses us. In the 11th chapter, there's a great flood that destroys the entire earth. It's an extinction level event. How do you come back from that? Surely that must be the end. Where do we go from here? And yet God calls Noah, who builds an ark and gathers the animals. And after the rains have come and gone, they open up the doors of the ark, and God puts a rainbow in the sky and issues a covenant, a promise, not just to Noah and his family, but to every creature that breathes on the face of the earth. This story that started out so dark turns out with such beauty. And then we go through the story of Abraham and Sarah, and Isaac and Rebekah, and Jacob and Rachel. And then this family turns into a larger family and somewhat of a nation, and we end up in Egypt. And we first go there as kind of guests. But it's not long before God's people are enslaved. And God's people are enslaved for 400 years. This is how civilizations end. This is how nations end. How do you come back from this? It could have ended there. It probably should have ended there. And yet, God sets a bush on fire, tells Moses to go tell Pharaoh, let my people go, and there's plague after plague, and then the sea splits and the people walk through the sea into freedom. 1,000 years later, when the story of being in Egypt is a long gone memory. The people are in their own land. They have a capital city now. They have a palace. They have a temple. And the nation of Babylon comes and encircles Jerusalem and lays siege to it for months. And finally, they break down the walls and enact the worst violence that you can imagine upon the people and the city. The lucky survivors are hauled off to Babylon as captives. 1,000 years prior, captives in Egypt. 1,000 years later, captives in Babylon. It's almost as if they hadn't gone anywhere. With your homeland destroyed and your freedom taken away from you, where does the story go from there? It looks like that's the last chapter. Like that's it. It could have ended there. It should have ended there. And yet 70 years later, the people of God make their way home and rebuild their land and their temple. I just gave you the highlights. If we all didn't have brunch plans, I could have kept going, because this is the story. There are these moments where you think, how can it go on? And then God brings us out of the ditch. And so there is a part of me that thinks the women at the tomb and the boys in the upper room should have remembered. They should have remembered the long story. When they saw Jesus be crucified, when they saw his body laid in the tomb, they could have been sad, but they also should have remembered that this looks like just the moment when God does something. I almost feel like the disciples should have camped out outside the tomb, just waiting, peeking in every so often, like expectant children. Did it happen yet? Did it happen yet? And so part of me is a little disappointed in them. But of course, for me to be disappointed in them, I would also have to be disappointed in me. Because sometimes I have trouble remembering, believing. Perhaps you do too. And not on mornings like this, right? Not in mornings where it's Easter and we all come to church in our Easter finest and you all look great. Not in mornings where the music is transcendent and the flowers are gorgeous. No, today we remember. I'm talking about the hard moments in life. The moments when we grieve and we mourn. The moments that we rage with anger. The moments that we get bad news from the doctor or bad news in a phone call. The moments where we don't know where we go from here. Then do we remember? Do we believe? G.K. Chesterton, a great English poet and writer and theologian, wrote this. He said, "Christianity has died many times and risen again, for it had a God who knew the way out of the grave." We have a God who knows the way out of the grave. And so on this Easter morning, as we listen to the story and as we sing the story and we see the story of life bursting out all around us, I invite you to remember and believe. Not just this morning, but in the moments that are hard, in the moments where we don't know where we go from here, to remember that we have a God who knows the way out of the grave. And here's the thing. I'm going to forget. Ask my wife. You're going to forget. We're going to have moments where we don't believe. But that is part of the reason why we come back to this place week after week after week. so that I might remind you, and you might remind me, that our God walks out of tombs. Happy Easter. Again, happy Easter. If you are joining us for the first time this morning at St. David's, welcome. This has been a church that for over 300 years has been on a mission to know God in Jesus Christ and to make Christ known to others. As I said in my sermon, this has also been a church in the last year that's been trying to read the Bible cover to cover. There is a podcast that goes with that, and you can find information about that on the inside of the back cover of the bulletin. There are people all over the country and all over the world that are regularly listening to this podcast, and I commend it to you. You can either start back in January when we started in Genesis, or you can just pick up now and carry along with us. If you're not a podcasting person, there are multiple in-person and hybrid Bible studies and book groups that you can learn about on our website. For children and youth, our Youth Mission Week in Philadelphia is June 17th to the 22nd, and the summer camps, Music Camp and Vacation Bible School, is June 23rd to 27th, and there is early bird pricing extended through April 30th. One of the ways that we make Christ known to others at St. David's is through our outreach. We have just finished our Lenten collection of toiletries, where we brought in 4 huge bins piled high of toiletries, which we will be able to provide to 4 of our local ministry partners because of your generosity these last 40 days. For the next 50 days, for the season of Easter, we're going to be collecting non-perishable food items. So I want to see 5 large bins at the end of Easter, and you can bring them in to the narthex. This week, we are hosting Family Promise, a ministry for families that are experiencing homelessness. I think we are full this week, but if you would like to get involved in future weeks when we are hosting Family Promise, you can get in touch with us. On May 4th is our annual meeting, and we'll be hearing some facts and figures about our outreach ministry, but I just want to share this with you this morning. In 2024, St. David's Outreach awarded $208,000 to 20 partners in the local Philadelphia area, to 4 longtime international partners in Cuba, Guatemala, Iraq, Uganda, and to the Episcopal Diocese of Western North Carolina and Southwest Florida for flooding and hurricane relief. And just this week, we sent relief to St. Mark's Episcopal Church in Altadena, California, whose church and school were completely burned to the ground in the recent fires there. There are so many ways to get involved here, ways to make a difference in the world and in your life, ways to know Christ and to make Christ known. And so walk in love as Christ has loved us and given himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God.